Ever since 2K took Evolve out back and shot it between the eyes, I've wanted to talk to you guys about a different game that got taken out back and shot between the eyes. The Legacy of Kain. This was a series that I remember enjoying as a kid, although thinking back on it I can't really remember why. So I figured it'd give me an excuse to go back and see if it's held up to the test of time. Plus it gives me an excuse to play the first game in the series that I never got to play. Blood Omen! Oh man, I bet this is gonna be so awesome. This is gonna suck, isn't it? I have no idea what the point of this cutscene is! All it shows us is a bunch of what I can only assume are wizards or cultists getting their asses handed to them by some vampire. Then eventually some dude in armor shows up and gets immediately knocked out. Then he gets cursed to only be a spirit in a suit of armor for failing so hard at life. Then it just cuts to another random death scene and a bunch of giant pillars cracking, and then that's it! The next part, we're just in a tavern playing as some guy that had nothing to do with any of that. Look, I know CGI was a big deal back when this came out, but you still have to have some kind of explanation with it, or it shouldn't have a spot at the beginning of your game! So the bartender kicks us out before we can even get any ale, providing yet another pointless scene to the beginning of this game. After you exit the tavern, you get swarmed by assassins, and no matter what you do or where you go, you get completely destroyed by them. You then get quite easily stabbed through your armor. I guess armor is made out of tinfoil in Nosgoth. Where we then get greeted by another cutscene! Seriously, game, if you're gonna just have 1 minute of gameplay where we have no chance in between cutscenes, don't bother to have the gameplay. So now we're in hell or something, and our main character gets greeted by the necromancer guy from the opening cutscene, who offers us a chance at revenge, and somehow turns us into a vampire. You know, that would make a lot more sense if you didn't just establish that he works for the people who seem to be against vampires 2 minutes ago! So you wake up in a crypt, and we finally get some narration from our main character, which will be just about the only way that we will get any of the plot explained to us for the rest of the game. This is also where you have to actually try to get used to the combat, which is one of the buggiest and most easily exploited combat systems I've seen for a game built like this. But we'll talk about that more later. Anyways, you kill some dudes, hit some switches, and leave the crypt, and begin encountering the most frustrating part of this game, the load times. Every time you want to leave a building, or switch levels in a dungeon, or enter your equipment menu, you have to deal with these ridiculously long load screens. I mean, imagine if it worked this way in real life. Alright, time for some lunch! Whoops, forgot my drink. Ah, damn it, now it's cold! So you search around for a bit and end up back in the town you got completely butchered in, easily dispatching all the assassins who killed you and hearing our protagonist claim that his quest is over! But apparently, we're the most easily persuaded vampire in all of existence, because somehow the necromancer can telepathically communicate with us, because I guess that's just a thing he can do, and tells us that they were just the lackeys and we need to find the true mastermind behind our death. God, I hope I get to kill that necromancer for making me play this game longer. So you keep moving along till you come across the pillars from the opening cutscene, as Kain meets the ghost of the woman murdered in that cutscene who explains we have to go kill a group of people called the Circle of Nine who are corrupting the land. Who's Kain? Oh, well, that's our main character. What's that? Why didn't I bring this up earlier? Oh, well that's because the game apparently decided it wasn't important until this point either! So Kain heads off to deal with some dude called Napropter, who's responsible for corrupting the Circle, but not before having to go through a handful of side dungeons to make sure you have all the powers you need to actually complete his dungeon. That's right! You have to go through all the side areas in this game, or else risk backtracking because you missed that one power-up that you missed in that one dungeon way back over there. God, it's like this game's trying to punish you for wanting to get on with the story. Anyways, you go to Napropter's lair, flip some more switches, kill a bunch more dudes, and then dutifully relieve Napropter of his head before having to go back to the pillars and talk to the Phantom of the Pillars, who tells us that we have to go kill that poor sap who got turned into armor in the opening cutscene. Which I would assume if he's trapped in a suit of armor that he already is dead, but whatever. So you head to his dungeon, and this is about where the inventory system starts being less of an annoyance and more of a giant pain in the ass. At this point in the game, they start throwing enemies that look just like most other armored guys, but are in fact just suits of animated armor. The problem with this is that the weapons that's most useful against every human enemy is completely worthless against these suits of armor, which means that you're having to constantly change your weapons out, which means you have to deal with those agonizingly long load times to both enter and exit your inventory, and it starts making you wonder why you're even still playing this godforsaken game! And yet this game has not even fully yet begun to suck! So you activate more switches, navigate more death traps, and eventually end up in a fight with the evil suit of armor, who takes an absurd amount of punishment for a boss fight. Anyways, after you knock him down enough, he gets fed up and starts blowing up his castle or something, and you have to teleport out of there and flee as you have no way of defeating him currently. Gee, I wonder if I have to go back to the pillars again. So you go back and talk to the Phantom Pain again, and she tells you to seek the Oracle for help, so you raid more dungeons, you flip more switches, you kill more dudes, until you finally come across the Oracle, who tells you to go find the vampire from the opening cutscene, because apparently he knows how to kill magic suits of armor or something. Then there's even more dungeons and switches until you finally reach the vampire, who tells us of his victory over the armor through a cutscene. And not just any cutscene, but an extended version of the opening cutscene. If you were just gonna use this cutscene later, why would you show it at the beginning of the game? Nobody was gonna know what was going on, and it didn't make me curious, it just made me really confused. So after telling us how much of a badass he is, the vampire gives us something to summon him with should we run into the armor again. And at this point in the game, I think they lost almost all pretense of trying to explain who people were and just started sending us places to murder people. So we find a tower, kill more things, flip more switches, until we run into the magical armor and conveniently 3 other people who we're looking for. One guy runs away while the other 2 continue on, and we chase after them after summoning the vampire to fight the suit of armor, which I'm sure will be a much more interesting fight than the one we're about to have. Alright, remember how earlier I said that the combat was easily exploited? Now's about when the game decides you need to be on the receiving end of it. So this is a relatively simple fight in theory, since one person kind of sits doing whatever at the top of the map and won't do anything till you get up high enough to be invisible range, while the other dude runs around like he's hopped up on PCP and turns chunks of the ground to water. The only problem with this theory is that the PCP addict does a ridiculous amount of damage when he so much as touches you, and about the only time you can hit him is when he stops to break the ground. But once you hit him, he just runs in a random direction, which usually means you'll just end up getting trampled. Anyway, after you manage to murder him, the caster person's relatively easy as long as you have magic and ranged items. So you gather whatever bits of them are required to fix the pillars, you head back to see if you can catch any of the awesome vampire armor fight, only to find that you missed out on anything actually cool happening, and grab the now destroyed armor's helmet. Then not much happens for a while, you talk to the ghost of Nosgoth present again, beat up another boss, return to talk to her again, then you go to find a king to get his army to stop some evil army run by something called the Nemesis. But he's too busy being mopey because he was an idiot and somehow got his daughter turned into a doll and is offering his entire kingdom for her revival. Are we sure that the world-ending event that's taking place isn't just natural selection? Because all these people seem really dumb. So you find and kill the guy responsible for turning her into a doll, which somehow reverses the curse, I guess, and you demand that the king lead his army against the evil army, which leads to an almost one-sided slaughter of the king's army while you walk past almost unimpeded. But just as you get close to the enemy's stronghold, you somehow get sent back into the past, and you know this because when you drink some guy's blood, you somehow see his memories. What? After that confusing sequence, you continue into the stronghold where, you guessed it, you flip more switches and kill more dudes. After yet another annoying boss fight, you proceed out of the stronghold where you get transported back to a different version of the present where the evil army doesn't exist. But there seems to be a lot of commotion coming from the town. So you proceed to town to find the crowd executing that badass vampire from earlier, and at the head of the crowd is the Oracle from earlier, who apparently is a time traveler and one of the people we need to defeat to fix the pillars, I guess. Then you go through a Colosseum-like boss battle where you have to fight yourself. Can this game be done now, please? After killing the time traveler guy, you head back to the pillars where there's actually something happening! Just as you walk up to the pillars, you get to see the necromancer talking with some other pillar dude, where he reveals that he sent the assassins to kill you before butchering the other guy, where you then have to defeat the necromancer. Yes! Justice will be mine for making me sit through this shitstorm game! So after you beat up the necromancer a bit, he says there's still one other person necessary to fix the pillars, before turning into some man-demon dog. And this fight is laughably easy. Just cast your reflect spell and smack him in the face every time he pops up his head. And after you beat him, you find out that the last person that's corrupting the pillars is yourself! How the hell would you not know that? You mean to tell me that even though every single other person in control of one of these pillars knows that they're in control of it, that our character just somehow conveniently forgot that little part of his life? Go to hell, game! Then you're given the weakest semblance of choice ever by the Phantom Menace to either sacrifice yourself and save the world or go full vampire and doom it. And while they're both equally shitty endings, the one that's canon is that Kain goes full vampire and becomes a complete asshole. This game is one of the biggest abominations I've ever seen. I'm honestly surprised they got the green light to even make another game in this series. Oh well, at least now that I'm done with this pile of crap, I can move on to a good game.
Oh, are you so sure about that?
What do you mean? Who are you?
Oh, you'll find out soon enough.
Ah, shit.